Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Mitchell. I'm a senior in the Religious Studies program, and welcome to Geopolitics and Failure during Operation Enduring Freedom. So, excuse me. The research question here is, how did the interaction between the Taliban as a non-state actor and Pakistan contribute to the failure of the United States during Operation Enduring Freedom? Here we see a picture of then President Bush and President of Pakistan at the time, Ashraf Ghani. And this is an important topic because one, we have an opportunity to add pertinent and relevant data to the conversation of geopolitics, based on America's longest military operation. Um, sorry, the United States' longest military operation. We get to put academia in a place where it might be able to better inform policymakers, individuals and NGOs, and just the broader global community about some of these interactions and their implications. And lastly, I do have a personal connection to this specific topic as I was deployed to Kandahar, Afghanistan, in 2018 and 2019. So figured I would note that there. This picture down here on the right, are the Hindu Kush Mountains that run right down the middle of the country of Afghanistan. Next, the historical substrate here, and what's important to understand from a historical perspective is the Soviet intervention in Afghanistan was a very drastic event in the history of not only the country of Afghanistan, but the Taliban specifically. Down here on the left, we see how the Soviet army was in Kabul, Afghanistan in 1978. They spent about 10 years, so half the time that the American government spent in Afghanistan. And it was in the wake of the Soviet withdrawal where the Taliban as an organization sprung up. So that's important to understand that the Taliban, in their view, were able to bring stability and religious legitimacy to a country that had been rocked by Soviet intervention and then civil war. Next, what's very pertinent to understand is the politics of geography surrounding Pakistan and India and why, as you will come to see in the presentation, Pakistan took a dual track in supporting the Taliban directly and indirectly, but also maintaining their position as an ally to the United States. Um, it it's important because Pakistan and India have a long-running feud due to the withdrawal of the British, and the reason why they support the Taliban is not only because there is an ethnic and religious connection, but there is also a geostrategic connection to the Taliban, and that was enough to fuel this dual track that Pakistan was taking. The initial invasion of Afghanistan was historic in the sense that it was one of the most successful military campaigns that the United States has had, waged to that point. The problem is it was not consolidated by any political or strategic measures that was able to secure the peace. The United States government immediately shifted their focus and perspective to the upcoming invasion of Iraq, and what's important here is to understand that there were other geopolitical forces at hand, other geostrategic engagements that were coming up, and that left a void for the Taliban to use its connection um, with Pakistan, reconstitute its forces, and then come back and essentially pit the United States into an ongoing intervention that was very costly, and that it didn't really have a high likelihood of prevailing in. Um, the next portion that's very important to understand is what I call the Westphalian trap. So the Peace of Westphalia was a set of agreements and treaties that concluded the 30 Years' Wars in Europe. What's important is to understand that it set foundations of how Western institutions viewed sovereignty in states. Those assumptions were not founded everywhere. Some scholars, like Karen Armstrong, would actually argue that the Westphalian view of states and governments is relatively new. So that's very pertinent in understanding why America misjudged the relationship between the three entities and how it contributed to the failure. Lastly, we see the Taliban as non-state actors. These were individuals who were unseated. There was regime change, but they were still able to maintain their power because their power was not, again, set up in this Westphalian nature where it was grounded in this sense of sovereignty. Their power and legitimacy came from Islam primarily, and again, their connection with Pakistan was largely based on their Pashtun roots and uh their religion as Muslims. So to conclude, this was a very brief and very high level view of how the geopolitical interaction between Pakistan as a state, the Taliban as a non-state, and the United States as a invading force led to the United